Hyperboreans, or ancient Atlanteans, an ancient extraterrestrial race present on Earth to this day. First, I want to go into Alexander the Great, and I've made past videos on this. We know that Alexander the Great was prophesied by the angel. There was a prophecy given in the book of Daniel, the Old Testament, by the archangel Gabriel, and that has come out, saying that the little horn would put an end to the Persian Empire, which was the big horn. This is a copy of the lightning rod of Zeus. It's supposed to be an Atlantean instrument or a weapon of the Hyperboreans. And this is a copy of it, which exists today in one of the Buddhist monasteries of Nepal. And I've meant to make a research on Alexander the Great and Nepal and the Buddhist monasteries there, the connection between Alexander the Great and the Buddhists of Nepal. They have a copy of the lightning rod of Zeus, which is an Atlantean superweapon that was given to Alexander the Great by someone that came from Hyperborea, which is the North Pole, the Arctic, which was one of the colonies or one of the cities where the Atlanteans existed, were populating. And one of the Atlanteans, which from the Emerald tablets and other ancient Greek writings are telling us that they were extraterrestrials, quote unquote, whatever that means, that one of these entities came, they look human, this person came and gave the lightning rod of Zeus to be given to Alexander the Great. And he supposedly used this in his conquering all the way from Greece all the way to the end of China. And his generals reported that they built a stele, a column, engraved saying that King Alexander has arrived up at that point, and that is the east coast of China, at the end of the coast towards facing Japan, towards the China Sea, and that they had buried the original lightning rod of Zeus in a safe place, and that was what they had put on that column, that the lightning rod of Zeus had been securely hidden. And the copy of that is today found in one of the Buddhist monasteries in Nepal. So, what is going on with these Atlanteans? Now, we know that we have these recent Department of Defense sightings of the U.S. Navy pilots sighting various supersonic vehicles with technology that is unknown to the world today. They don't know of any country that has such technology. They seem to be interdimensional entities and interdimensional vehicles. And when we read already, you'll find a playlist of the Emerald tablets written by Thoth the Atlantean. They did have very, very advanced technology. They had flight, they had space flight, they also had technology to go from one dimension to the other, in that from the material plane to the non-material plane. So they're here one minute, they're not here the next moment. And also space flight and interstellar flight. And not only that, but they were guilty of misusing this technology to the detriment of people and Earth. And Thoth the Atlantean describes that fact in his Emerald tablets. There's about 40 of them, 42 that I read for you in the Emerald tablets playlist if you want to listen to that. Amazing stuff in there. And he says that that's why, from their haughtiness and ego and selfishness and detriment to the world, that's why there was a divine intervention that did away with Atlantis, But a lot of these people, the Atlanteans, a lot of them did escape to, they were supposedly came to their senses, and they went to establish new colonies in the various parts of the world, where the first thing they did was build cities with pyramids. And he credits himself with building the Giza pyramid. He says he also stashed his spaceship under under a sphinx in the plateau of pyramids. We don't know if it's Giza or some other pyramid plateau, but he says he stashed his hid his spaceship under a sphinx. Now let's go to this thing about the Atlanteans. Manly P. Hall, by the way, he says that these UFOs that we see zipping around our heads, they're here one moment, that they're not the next, could be these Atlanteans, these Hyperboreans, that were of the make that we had from the Sumerian kings list. These Sumerian kings used to live for tens of thousands of years. And he believes that these things, these entities that we see, these UFOs, could be Atlanteans or Hyperboreans that are still around us today. Most of the time they're hidden. And there are those in Latin America who believe that they come out during dusk or sunrise, when there's like a twilight. They're very dangerous beings in that they have such advanced technology. And they seem to have been around when we had a different type of a sun. In other words, remember, the Old Testament says that before Noah, before the Great Flood, there was no rainbows. In other words, our sun was not the sun that we have today. We didn't have rainbows before the Great Flood. So that means that there was some kind of a geological or celestial change in our Earth atmosphere. That's another story. But let's go into the Hyperboreans. An ancient extraterrestrial race present on Earth to this day, and I'm translating from a Greek article. Supremacists, as a region in Hyperborea is the North Pole, as we know, as the inhabitants of this region. These are the names that come from Greek mythology. It could mean beyond the north, over the North Pole, over the North Wind. Interpretations that have less to do with what ancient mythographers might have meant, but with how modern interpretive efforts perceive it. But everyone agrees that in today's geography of the Earth, the area of the far north could be located somewhere in the north, near or around the North Pole. Of course, both the Northerners and the Hyperboreans are considered a mythical city, which existed only in the imagination of the ancients, such as Atlantis and Lemuria. Therefore, for skeptics, what is examined could easily be a neo-mythological approach and nothing more. And for the rest, perhaps there are indications of an unknown reality, of an unknown past that, however, could touch today. It seems that perhaps this was not only the Greeks who referred to the Northerners, the Hyperboreans. It's possible that other sources give some information about a civilization that lived in these northern areas, without always being sure that they show the same ancient or even mythical civilization. So if indeed this culture has been described by others, then we learn that the Hyperboreans were quite tall. Also, they had blue eyes, blonde hair, and very white skin. In other words, they looked Nordic. Their society was very well organized with constant development, with a special love for the arts and sciences. They had advanced technology, as we said before, with love and respect for man, as they had developed relationships with people beyond their own race. Their DNA must have been such that they probably knew their age, neither age nor disease. They cultivated the spirit and the heart, and they were very psychic beings. It's even said that the Hyperboreans are long-lived people who live for 14 million years. There is a paradox in this wonderful kingdom. While in theory it was somewhere in the northern regions of our planet, which today we know are cold and icy, then in those years, eternal spring prevailed and the sun shone 24 hours a day. As we said, of course, before the Great Flood, we had a different type of sun. A lot of people believe it could have been Saturn. Something happened, a celestial catastrophe, a phenomenon. Now, another strange thing is that while everyone who knew where the far north was, it was almost impossible to get there, because this area was protected by huge transparent ice walls. Even those who did has succeeded in doing so by means of transport that were not conventional, that is, by those used by many people. There was quite advanced guarding and specialized security that did not allow anyone who did not have access to them. It was a tribe that lived peacefully, without war, and above all, without participating in other wars or putting on wicks to ignite wars in foreign lands in order to serve their own interests. An exception to this is the pits with which they were in constant defensive war because they threatened to seize the gold for their country. It's said that they built underground tunnels on various continents and had access to places from which they drew energy and or whatever they used and turned it into a positive for the beings of the planet, or even a kind of free energy. In fact, there are modern claims that somewhere in these tunnels there are gates, which used to be transported to, they were like some kind of time gates or time portals, which they used to be transported to other places in beyond Earth. And again, this is what is explained to us very uniquely and analytically in the Emerald Tablets by Thoth the Atlantean. Some researchers claim that the Northerners probably coexisted for some time with the powerful culture of Atlantis, Lemuria, the ancient Greeks, at a time when Apollo had many contacts with them, in fact, exchanging a lot of knowledge. And it's argued that exaggeration is not a legend, but it still exists and not lost. After the sinking of Atlantis, it's very likely that they made sure that they would be living somewhere else on Earth. As we said, this is exactly what Thoth the Atlantean told us in the Emerald Tablets, which he wrote, and where one can only be reached by following underground tunnels they built or by space flight. They were already preparing to move inland, and there may be somewhere in the north, above the north. As we said, a lot of archaeologists in Latin America say they're underground as well, essentially in a state that does not tread on Earth. It's very likely that, as a guess, some of the descendants who stayed and survived on the surface, or who came to the surface over time in the course of our human history, adapted to different parts of the world and then mixed with inhabitants different parts of the world. Perhaps the only known point that connects the then with today, the myth with history, is the visit of the ultra-northern Pythagoras in a way to appreciate the umbilicus mentioned, while until at one time they did not stop and give and take, they had with Delos, according to Herodotus, the ancient Greek historian. If and when such information could be true, when the hypothesis that the North still exists somewhere on our planet, in or above it, could possibly be supported, if some of the above references could even have such nuggets of truth surpassing the taboo of the fairy tale, we would not rule out the possibility that the Hyperboreans, or the Atlanteans, would be an extraterrestrial race which still exists from the distant past to the present day. This was from a Greek article from DIadrastika, and please tell me what you think. Again, it's a recap of what we know from Herodotus, from what we know from the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean, from what we know from the Atlantean technology, and also let's keep in mind the fact of Alexander the Great, prophesied to us by the Archangel Gabriel in the book of Daniel, and also given this lightning rod of Zeus. It looks like he was holding it from the middle, and it has been hidden somewhere in China, I suppose. And Alexander the Great's general erected a column, an engraved stone column, saying that King Alexander arrived up to that point, and the lightning rod of Zeus has been properly concealed and hidden underground somewhere. And the copy of it is in a Nepal Buddhist monastery. Isn't that something? Please tell me what you think about all this. Thank you for your support, and if you'd like, please support me on Patreon. Thank you. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.